Okay. All right, now it's recording. Thank you. Okay,
So you're talking mindset.
So mindset. So we're talking about mindset. So you'll see people in conversation will say, oh, that's a mindset. So Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, she basically talks extensively about mindset. And virtually everyone who has come after her has referred to her book. And so the term that's a mindset, or it's all mindset, has become like vernacular. It's become just commonplace, and so commonplace. And this happens frequently in language, where we use a phrase, we use a term, but we don't know necessarily where it originally came.
Like redneck?
Right. Or like slow your roll, or like, any of a number of phrases and things, and people go, I just use it because that's the way everybody else uses it, but I don't really know the etymology.
Yeah.
So this is the point. So mindset, it's a mindset. So you're going to love the Carol Dweck book, because you will read the book and all of a sudden you'll see laid out in the book all these concepts, kind of in their original form. And then all of a sudden you'll be able to, connect all the dots and see, all those times that you use the word, and whoever else used the word. And you can even have conversations like, oh, have you read Carol Dweck's Mindset book? And you'll find that a lot of people will say no, because this is the way language works. If I start using a phrase, like I'm going to start using some phrases in my book that I'm writing, and then you will see over time, people will start using that phrase. Will they have read my book? Maybe, maybe not, probably not.
But they will have read an article where someone wrote about your book and used a quote.
Right. And then it just rolls forward.
Yeah.
And so the idea here, so a lot of the books that are curated on the list that I have put together, they're curated for one of two purposes. One, either let's read and get thinking about moving forward how we think about the issues that face humanity, our own humanity, or the collective. Let's think about those ideas, and let's read about those ideas that change it up a little bit, that let us turn the Rubik's cube, the Rubik's cube a little bit, and say, let me look at it from this angle and that angle and that angle, but something different, as opposed to a book. Like I will never curate a book into the list that basically regurgitates everything that came before. Now, I've read books that have regurgitated Carol Dweck's book. I've read books that have regurgitated Black Hole Focus. Lots of those. So, but they're not going to get on the list. They're just not going to get on the list.
It's a waste of our time. We've already read the best information that's there.
Right. I mean, read the original source. It's like Joseph Campbell's book is considered definitive. Sapiens, I think, is going to be considered definitive. And, you don't see that coming. Initially, you may not see that coming. They stand the test of time. Decades go by, decades and decades go by, hundreds of years go by, and the books still stand. That's why a lot of the Greek and Roman classic books still stand. Although I take exception to a lot of them, because a lot of them have very, patriarchal dominant kind of biases. And so, I feel like they have to be taken with a grain of salt. But the male coach, mentor people today love those books. Why? Because they're male, and because, they don't necessarily, right, they don't necessarily have the, they don't take the female part into, anyway, so I'm curating the books based on, let's have some new thinking, let's advance and expand the way we think today. So
You know, with I don't know where I heard this. Now I got to remember where I heard this. Progress cannot be made without the truth being told. And that, I think, is where Sapiens comes in, because it really just puts the truth out there in a very, you know, this is how it is, this is how it was, this is how it, you know, period. There's no second guessing that, you know, and that's where this starts, is people getting a real history lesson. You know, so much of our history that was taught to us wasn't real. So much of our, you know, I say it all the time, my 7th grade American history class.
Yeah.
Total bullshit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And the truth is also, I think, that when you start untangling intersections, when you start untangling history going, you know, back, you know, first you have to untangle your own family history. Then you untangle, you know, your, you know, you have your immediate family history, and then you go back and you look at your, you know, generations of family history.
yeah, I'm doing that.
And you go back and you look at, you know, cultural history, you know, regional history, you know, like the further back you go and look and unravel these things, the more truths you discover, and potentially the harder it is to recognize, you know, what it is that you're seeing is real. So I was having a conversation the other day with a woman who's a friend of mine. She's been a friend for a long time, and she worked for me for a while, and she's African American, and we were talking about the whole racism question. And I had said that I had just seen a wonderful, I'm going to write an article on Medium about it soon, but I had seen a wonderful TED Talk interview. Well, I didn't see it, I listened to it, with Ibram Kendi. Now, Ibram Kendi, I have 2 books of Ibram Kendi's on the book list. One is Stamped from the Beginning, and the other one is How to Be an Anti-Racist. And we were talking about the question of racism, and I was talking about this interview with Kendi, and he had a really wonderful perspective that tied right into something that I've been talking about for a while. And I've been talking about zealotry. So a zealot is somebody who is, you know, like an evangelist who is super uber excited about their newfound enlightenment, whatever it may be. So you see this happen with born-again Christians. I've seen the light, and now I want you to see
and
the
now
light.
I'm right.
Well, you know, it's zealotry. Like, I am so excited because this has freed my mind and my life, and so I want you to have that experience too. And so come on, you know, come with me. I have this, you know, this amazing new life. It also happens with people who have just stopped smoking. It also happens with people who have just stopped alcohol. Now, I like the alcohol story. I like the alcoholism story because if you look at if you look at the path of an alcoholic, so first you have, you know, somebody who's drinking a lot, and they, you know, everyone around them sees what's going on. And they may even say, I think you have a problem with alcohol. You might be an alcoholic. Have you thought about it? And the alcoholic will say, they're in denial. No, I'm not an alcoholic. Or, you know, I don't have a problem. That's the first response. I don't have a problem. Until something happens, and then all of a sudden they realize that they do have a problem, and everybody around them was right, but they couldn't see it. Everybody could see it but them. But then at the moment that they do see it, and they change, and they get help, and they finally do see the problem, now they have seen the light. And so you can see in a 12-step program, somebody will come, and the difference between I'm not an alcoholic and my name is so-and-so and I am an alcoholic. That's a huge shift right there, right? So all of a sudden I recognize that I am an alcoholic and I can admit it. And now I realize also that I have to be thinking about that every single day for the rest of my life if I don't want to go back to being an alcoholic again. Okay. So much of how the brain is wired and so much of how we think travels in that pattern. So let's take the question of racism. And, you know, the big topic right now on everybody's mind is white supremacy and white racism. So you have a lot of white people walking around and posting things on Instagram and social media and saying, I am not a racist. It's kind of like saying, I am not an alcoholic. This is the denial.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, if people are still walking around saying, I'm not a racist, it's like saying, I'm not an alcoholic. It's much easier, you know, when you get to a point, when you realize it, where you say, yes, I'm a racist. Yes, I'm a racist. Yes, I have been a racist. I have this problem. I've been in this system. I recognize that. Now, but you run the risk of zealotry, which we're also seeing in society right now. So you see people who, you know, from an African American standpoint, they're like, get over yourself. We've seen this forever. Of course you've been a racist. You do not need to be in my face on social media saying, I'm a racist, I'm sorry, I take responsibility for it. Just like, go do your own work. That's what you have to do. Go, you know, it's like the 12-step program. There are things you need to go do. You just go do them. You don't need to announce it to the world. Just go do it.
Yes, they do.
Right? And so, but here's another thing. Once you read Sapiens, you also recognize, and you'll see it when you read Behave by Sapolsky, you'll see the same thing. You come to recognize that, and there's a guest I have, he's a PhD linguist student staying with me right now. He is very incredibly talented, amazing conversations with this young man. And he makes the point, and he's not white, he's Asian. And he makes the point that this isn't an isolated problem. This problem of racism and saying, I'm not a racist, genocide has been happening in countries for millennia that did not involve a single white person. This isn't like a new thing that white people cornered the market on. However, if I start to have a conversation, because the narrative right now in America is whites and blacks and white supremacy and Black Lives Matters, which are all good. It's a good discussion to have, but it is not the only discussion needed. And you know, I had a young man here not long ago from Jamaica, the man who I told you who got shot and killed by the cops. And the conversation we had in the garden, he's talking about growing up in Jamaica, and he says to me, you know, I grew up in Jamaica and I don't look like the other Jamaicans, so, you know, it was hard in elementary school. What do you mean? I'm thinking maybe his nose is too big, or, you know, his ears stick out funny, or what. I don't know, maybe his hair is different. He said, no, my skin color is darker than most Jamaicans. And Trevor Noah, you know, talks about this all the time, you know, in South Africa, where you have hundreds of tribes in Africa and everybody's got a different skin color, there is prejudice, you know, one. Now, people will say, well, prejudice isn't racism. I think we're splitting hairs. I think we're splitting hairs. I'm not trying to deflect the question of are whites racist or not. What I'm saying is this is embedded in humanity. This is a thing in all humans, and we all have to step up, and we all have to recognize that we all have this us versus them thinking that comes from ancient brain operation, right? Either you have dinner or you're eating dinner.
Yeah.
You're eating dinner or you are dinner. Us, them.
That's one way of putting it. Hang on, I'm getting some really bad feedback here, so I'm going to put my headset on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Now it stopped.
Okay.
Okay. Oh shit! I don't know what I was going to say.
Anyway, one of the other points I wanted to make was, if you get to a point in a conversation about any of this with anybody, you may find that all of a sudden somebody goes, like, they'll change the subject, or they don't want to continue with the conversation. They can't continue with the conversation, and that means you have to let it go. Yeah. Because they're not ready to go that distance yet in the conversation, and that's okay. Everybody's going to come to the place that they come whenever they're feeling comfortable with it. And I know there's people who say, well, I don't want you to feel comfortable. But just in introducing the topics, just in getting into the conversation, how can humanity hope to make advances if we can't at least have the civil conversations about these topics?
So that's it all comes back to our language. What we're taught to be comfortable with in our nuclear family, where we're being raised, the conversations that happen around our dinner tables. I was raised in a family that said a lot of awful things that I, grew up comfortable hearing because that's how they spoke. And then when I realized what they were saying was wrong, I was taught to tolerate it anyways because that's just how they are. And I was taught to tolerate it by the women in my family teaching me language, that was going to be used against me, that I had to learn how to tolerate it, and that I couldn't use it in order to defend myself, because then it wouldn't be ladylike.
Right. And how was it, like you said, when I found out that was wrong? How was it that you found out that it was wrong? That whatever
I went out into the world. I moved away from my family. I met new people that were not curated into my life by where I lived, the geographics where I lived, the demographics where I lived. I went into bigger cities. I worked in bigger buildings in industries where it brought people from, different walks of life into my world. And I realized that what I'd been taught was wrong. And it wasn't even like a realization. I just treated people the way I wanted to be treated. I knew how I didn't want to be treated because of how I'd been treated in my own family, because of how I have to, let people be themselves. But I can't be me saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't like being talked to like that. Mm-hmm. There was such a oppression, it's an oppressive, family dysfunction. Right. So going out into the world where I didn't have an education, I had to start at the bottom. I had to learn from people who were teaching me that came from all different kinds of walks of life. Unfortunately, a lot of them were white male, thought they could do whatever because they always had and gotten away with it. So why not, why stop? And then would use things like religion to hide behind when or if they were caught. Mm-hmm. So language to me becomes the most important thing. How we use it, to describe, even there's a great, I have it on my, hold on. It's a documentary, Misrepresentation.
Oh, that sounds very familiar.
It says it's the representationproject.org. Mm-hmm. And it basically talks about how media, The media is selling the idea that girls and women's values lies in their youth, beauty, and sexuality, and not in their capacity as leaders. Boys learn that their success is tied to dominance, power, and aggression. We must value people as whole human beings, not gendered stereotypes. And it's a great story about how, you know, as a
That's a
woman,
website. It's not a book. It's a website.
it's a website, and there's a documentary that you could watch. The representation
On the website.
I think it's there.
Okay.
Or it might be, you know, there might be some links you have to follow to get to. It might be on Netflix is where you got to watch it. Here it says there, watch the trailer. But it looks like that. I don't know if you can
Oh,
see
I can't see that. No.
Good
So what is
background.
it? Oh, I can see kind of now.
Sorry, it's that The Representation Project.
Cool.
And the film is called Miss, MISS.
Yeah.
You know, misrepresentation. And, you know, you talked about ancestry. Well, as I have to tell my mother stories that I'm learning, and she's just, oh, well, I don't think she's so shocked by him. I think she really knew. And I think she just decided to not tell the story anymore. And instead of allowing the truth to come to the surface, she continued to bury it, which continues to create dysfunction and the inability to communicate effectively when other problems happen, because you have this abscess of the lie growing down here,
Right.
and all the dysfunction layered on top of it.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about the mindset book, and you have all these things layered on top of it. It's the same thing in our dysfunctional families of, we don't go and look for new information. We just stick to grandma's story, which grandma's story could have been great grandma's story. And you think about it, you know, while that was only 4 people ago, think of how different life is. And the only reason life is different is because those people left where they were because it was really bad.
Yeah.
If it was good, they would have stayed, right?
Right.
Okay. So it was really bad. They came here, they did what they did, but instead of, you know, keeping track of the truth, they allowed the myths and the legends and the glamorization of what happened, you know, especially here in America, of this new, you can't discover something if somebody's already here. So, you know, it's this whole, again, it comes back to this mindset that has developed over, especially, I can only speak for what I experienced, but especially as I see it in the last 4 generations. And I can't speak to my daughter's generation and like my brother's grandchildren's generation yet. I can only speak to my generation of how we were put into this mindset of being superior, of being this, you know, so-called manifest destiny of, and then having this ability to just pretend like all this didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, it just didn't happen. We just walk all over it, and we bury it.
Yeah, the big challenge, I think that one of the big challenges for, you know, some of the new organizations that are trying to fight the, you know, the old stories, you know, is to somehow stay humble and stay not feeling like they're superior. So, you know, if you see, you know, white supremacy, if you see racism, if you see whatever you see, you have to see it in yourself first. So, you know, one of my experiences has been that if I point the finger and call somebody on a thing, before I do that, I need to look here to see where is that in myself. You know, like where might I harbor that?
But I think we have to call it out, especially when we hear the language that we hear. My mom married a guy who was a white supremacist, and he was such a loser too. I don't know where he got his belief system from, but he developed it over his own time. I don't believe his family, you know, he just decided to be a white racist because he was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy. And he found good fertile soil in my family to, you know, be hateful and ugly about people. But his daughter was, you know, she's blonde hair, blue eyed, very pretty, very successful photographer here in Sacramento, California. And she posted something on Instagram the other day about how her dad really tried to brainwash her into that belief of she was better than other people just because she was blonde hair and blue eyed. The Aryan race, and he would use very racist, ugly language around her growing up, and then around my family. And I'm married to a Hispanic guy who thinks he's a white guy, but it still will bother him. He'll take it only so long. He'll take it to a point, and then he's got to leave. He won't stand up against it because of his own. I won't even go there. But I got to a point where I couldn't be around it because of my daughter.
Yeah.
But my mom, again, her own family dysfunction, you're talking about class systems being pitted against each other over time. You've read the books. There were poor people. So as white poor people, you're pitted against anybody else who's poor of other different colors. And,
it's so many stories.
The Germans against the Irish.
Yeah.
And I say, that's why I'm so fucking angry. I'm both German and Irish. I hate both of me. So,
oh my gosh. You have this war inside.
It comes down to that language of what you were taught. And I see it in these last 4 or 5 generations as I go through this ancestry thing and hear the stories of my mother and the things that come out of her mouth. And I just go, Mom, step outside and take a look at the neighborhood you live in, and realize that you wouldn't be living there if people still believed the way you fucking believe, Oh, it just.
Yeah, this is hard stuff. This is hard. It's hard stuff to process. It's not easy.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you one more story about this. So, she calls me on the day of George Floyd's funeral. And of course, it's on everything. You can't get away from it. So she calls me up and wants to complain about it. And I go, Mom, how much do you think a vending machine costs? Just out of the blue. And she's like, what do you mean a vending machine? I go, a soda vending machine, a vending machine. Like when you walk into the grocery store, there's a vending machine there. You can buy a soda. Oh my God. I don't know. I wouldn't have any clue. I go, you remember when my brother, your son on his 18th birthday went and stole one of those things? Him and his buddies thought it was so much fun to go out on his 18th birthday and steal one of those things. And they brought it back to the house and they set it up in your garage. And you just thought, oh my God, and you didn't call the police and do anything about it. And they thought it was so funny that they went and did it again. And then they got caught. And then do you remember how just how Paul was, and he was stealing from everybody? He stole so much from you and your parents that you quit helping him. Do you remember that? And he ended up in jail. And I was the one who went and put my car title on the line so I could bail him out because you guys had all washed your hands of him because he was a criminal. And then don't you remember how he got so indignant with all the stuff he had to go through that he and his buddy that he actually ended up marrying this buddy's sister. They built a pipe bomb and they blew up a cop car. Do you tell your friends that you are the mother of the first domestic terrorist before they even had the fucking term domestic terrorism? Do you tell them that? Oh, man, God, Mom, do you ever think of how different life would be if they had shot Paul back then when he was 18 years old?
Jeez.
You wouldn't have Janice. You wouldn't have William. You wouldn't have Jill. You wouldn't have those 3 great-grandkids of yours either.
Yeah.
Mom, guess what? Guess who'd be taking care of you right now?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
She forgets.
Yeah.
And she's all about, one more thing. She's all about, stop abortion, but it was okay for that man to be killed. It was okay for that. And it was okay for that. And it was okay for that. But we're going to,
yeah, I know the hypocrisy and the inconsistencies in the thinking. I understand. It's selective.
But I see it mostly in these last 4 generations of they came here, but they were pushed out of one. They came here, they're fighting each other, and it's taught down those generations.
Yes, and the more you see, the more you will see.
Yeah.
So now, I just read, or I just listened to, sorry, I had a brain fart there a moment. Sometimes I have to say what I have to say right at the time.
I know, I'm the same way. That's why I take notes. I try to take notes when we talk.
It goes out. I know, I should, even like when we're doing calls like this, I should make notes while people
Susan,
talk.
I have a Susan journal.
This
This is my Susan
good
journal. This is my cohort. This is my be a tall
okay,
poppy.
it came back. It came back. All good thoughts come back if they're meant to come back.
Yes.
So I just listened to Noam Chomsky. It was a series of interviews with Noam Chomsky, and I got it from the library, and the title was Imperial Ambitions. And so it talks about, imperialism, which of course, having an empire, that was like the British thing. But now it's the American thing. People criticize the British Empire, and yet we have this American empire mentality in our global positions and in our world thinking. And
that's okay, because that's us.
Right. Imperial Ambitions, it's called. Anyway, and so in one of the interviews, Mark Twain, the famous satirist, he was well known as an anti-imperialist. Like, he did not believe that America should be having imperialist ambitions. He didn't believe that. And I tend to agree with him. I won't say tend, I do agree with him on that. And it's probably why I also like satire so much. But here's the thing. He had one interview where he said, in America, we have this situation where we have so much privilege, and it's not just whites. And I'm not saying that there isn't a long way to come, with how the white supremacy thing plays out, because it still does play out. But I am saying that there are people who, regardless of their skin color, live in America and have a lot of privilege compared to other places where they might live in the world. And we have this situation now, because we are such a wealthy country and there is so much privilege, that you can go to high school, maybe not even go to college, do a little college, and find some work, get some work, and not have to ever pick up a book and read ever again for the rest of your life, and get by. I'm not saying you're going to get by well. I'm not saying you're going to get by, famously. We obviously have social issues here, like we don't have, good healthcare systems, and there are lots of systems that are terrible for people, but nonetheless, we have enough that we can get by and not continue to educate ourselves ever again for the rest of our lives once we get out of school. It's not a requirement. And yet, if I look across countries that are, doing well, or maybe not the countries doing well, but individuals, I will say this way, categorically, individuals who continue to educate themselves and never stop learning, always maintain a student posture and never stop learning, always reading, always keeping their minds open, have better overall lives in so many ways. Financially is just one of them.
Well, so that was one thing. When you have big goals for the future, your present is much better because your tasks are better.
They reflect where you're taking yourself. Yeah.
Right. And that comes back to, so this is something that in the Black Hole Focus, where he talks about, if someone were dropped into your life right now, today, they have no knowledge of the past and all the bullshit and all the whatever, and they have no what's coming up, what you got worried about. If they could just spend a day in your life, what would that be like? What would they think about your life? Would they think, wow, you're really spoiled or lucky or busy or doing the right things? Or would they think, wow, you're really wasting your time? Or, I wish I could come and live like this. You're so lucky, you get to do nothing or whatever. But, if you can just focus on just today without all of the crap, and you could spend your day any way you wanted to, how would you do it? Or you could spend your day living a day in the way that, you think your day would be once your dreams come true.
Yeah.
What are the tasks that are going to be required once those dreams come true to keep that moving along? Because, and you said it, what's the next mountain? So there always has to be an evolution of
something that keeps you going. Otherwise,
yeah, I
you
mean,
just it's
even
really
if you
easy.
win the lottery, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's really easy to not have a vision for who you want to become, who you want to be, and who you want to become. And just because, and that goes back to what did you want to do when you were a little person, right? What was your favorite thing? What was your favorite game? What did you like to do? Did you paint? Did you write? Right? There's something. So here's the story. So when I was little, like, I always was a reader, I always was a writer, and I always loved business. So when I was in third grade, I haven't written this story yet for Medium, but when I was in third grade, the boys would have this covert operation. When the teacher would turn her back, they would take little pieces of paper and roll them up, put them in their mouth, and then spit them out through a straw. Spitballs. Disgusting. Really, totally gross. They thought it was really funny. And they would do this every time the teacher would turn her back. The spitballs would be flying through the class, and then the teacher would turn around and all the boys would be like totally straight. And I watched this happen and thought, this is just crazy. And then my mind gets going, and I go home and I write a newspaper. Well, it was really more like a one-page newsletter, but I called it a newspaper. And because it was news and it was on paper, and I called it the Spitball Special.
I love it.
And I wrote little stories about who was doing what, in the classroom. And then I took it to class, third grade, and I sold it to the boys for a penny. And back then you could go to the park and get candy for a penny candy. That was a thing. 1 penny bought you a Tootsie Roll, or, a Necco wafer, or, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
A jawbreaker. And so I would sell this to the boys, and I would take my fistful of pennies and go buy my candy. And so in third grade, I was creating business. I thought that was fun. I liked doing that. And this is the thing. There are things that you know about yourself at your deepest level, that if you sit quietly and you meditate and you spend time in nature and you really, really go back there and you really, really think and listen to your own soul, it will tell you what you're supposed to be doing. And most of us are not doing those things because we've been taught that you go through school and you get good grades and you get stars and you get accomplishments, and then you go get a job and you do this and you do that. And none of that has to do with anything about who you are and what you're meant to do here. And that's what all this is about. Reading the books, the whole program. It's all about, what are you supposed to do here? And I know that, I'm supposed to write, I'm supposed to read, and I'm supposed to create business. That's what I do. It's what I've always done. It's what I love.
And I know that that's what I'm supposed to do. I am supposed to write. I've had, probably in the last 2 years, a handful of people who are clairvoyant, intuitive, whatever, we start having these conversations, and they'll say to me, you have to write, because what you write will help other people heal. So I know that about myself. I also know that I keep getting signs that bring me back to the writing part. I can't, other things don't work out, this is what I always come back to. So why do I keep fighting this?
Yeah.
Um,
And reading informs your writing. The more
right.
you read, the more your brain is going to have just things to pull.
Well, okay. So part, and I want to get to the very last question here is, so during all this, it's made me realize, you know, I need my own, I need to create my own website because I have this business idea, right? And I have all this stuff going on. So I started remaking yet another website, wishing I would have never gotten rid of the very first one. You know, if I could tell any author out there that if they're starting right now, start a website and never let it go. If it goes dormant, if it goes whatever, but just always have it, because you put so much information there that, you know, I don't have it now from 10 years ago. So I'm putting stuff there. And I've decided to call it Nancy Writes because that's easier, and I'm going to write about a lot of different stuff. But I've made it my table. You know, we talked about Shirley Chisholm and bringing your folding chair to their table. No, get your own table. And then there's another woman who's I think her name is Ashley Ash. She calls herself Ash. Her thing is the middle finger project, and it's a great. Oh God, and her book. I listened to it. It's great. It's not a book. It's theater. It's fantastic. But, you know, what is your middle finger project? What are you going to give to the world, man? What are you giving to the world? Right. But so that comes back down to, you know, my enlightenment. I need to read more, bringing the right people into my life, you know, the path, you know, luck is when, you know, being preparation and opportunity cross. You got to be prepared for that opportunity. So how do you prepare for it? You study, you read, what is it that you want to do? So, you know, all of that is now going into my website. And it comes down to that very last question after in Sapiens, where he talks about how, you know, we're evolving with, you know, becoming cyborgs. If you have a knee or a hearing aid or an eye, you know, you've had all these things. Well, the very last question is, what do we want to become?
Right.
And that's where this, I think, Mastermind is taking us. Where do we want to be? You know, what do we want to become? Who do we want to become?
I mean,
You know,
maybe, and that's that's like the pivotal question, isn't it? What do you want to become?
I want to become the person that I need to be so that I can help the people I'm supposed to help. Because that's what our journey is about, is helping others, right?
Right.
That's supposed to be the journey, helping others. And helping others do
Well, I
what
don't
they
know if about is helping as much as you know,
not
because,
hurting.
well, not hurting. Well, I don't know. Mr. Rogers said, you know, we said, look for the helpers, right?
I just watched that movie last night.
I'm going to watch it. I haven't watched it yet.
Fantastic movie.
I'm still kind of on the fence about the help word, just because it's kind of a loaded word.
Well, it's help in a lot of different ways. You know, the Greek have 4 words for the word love. Isn't it Greek?
Yeah. And I think that's true for help too. I think that
So
there's
it's helping, you know, not necessarily having to go pick somebody up and drive them someplace, but, you know, just having a conversation where you spark an idea and they remember something, and it starts one thing that goes to another. You open a door for somebody, you know, you do something nice. It's just that sort of way of treating people. And how do you want to be treated? Well, how do you become the person that you need to become if you're out treating people like shit?
Yeah.
Unless the person you need to
I'm
become is
very,
a dead body in a ditch somewhere, then, you know, that can happen.
yeah, I'm very fond of, like, you know, pay it forward, because, you know, I've had all these blessings, I've had all this privilege in my life. And so, you know, now how can I pay forward to others what I've been so richly blessed with? So that's I feel, for me, that's kind of the language that packages that sentiment for me.
Okay, so the language, you talked about meditation, how I've always called it the signs. We're always looking for the signs. The universe, God, your mom gives you the signs of what we should do in our life. And if we don't pay attention to them, the signs get a little harder. You know, instead of just having a little fender bender, you're going to have a big accident type thing. Well, if you meditate, then you're allowing all those signs to come to you, and you're open to receiving them, so the universe doesn't have to go around knocking you off your rocker all the time.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. You're going along with your life and you think, but you've changed, but you've kind of gotten away from where
Yeah.
you're supposed to be over here. And the universe goes, bam!
Yeah. It's just,
You're
it's
supposed
like,
to be doing this.
yeah, it's like, just sit still for a minute. Just sit still and listen. Just
Yeah.
sit still. Just be
That's
calm. Sit
exactly
still and
what.
listen.
So
Let
exactly
the
what.
messages come. Like quiet your body and yourself and your mind. Just let the messages come to you and flow to you. I've been watching a lot on quantum physics, and how it's energy. It's all energy, and it's all energy flow. And for years, spiritual mystics would talk about this energy flow, and it was in the realm of spirituality. But now quantum physics is describing the energy flow in the universe, from a physical perspective, but it's really energy. Energy is very much spiritual, right? It's very much, you can't see it, but it's there.
Well, it's the same definition as God. Energy is all there
It's all
is
encompassing. It's
God.
back there in the back. It's just there in the background. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
just that's
interesting
the
that
same.
that convergence is. I'm having a lot of fun with that convergence.
There's a neat. I'm trying to
So
see.
did you want to talk? Did you want to talk about? I don't know if Lisa's going to make it here or not, but do you want to go through your Sapiens highlights?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I won't take too much more of your time. I know you're middle of
Oh
your
no,
day.
you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. I scheduled a bunch of time for this, and I have something at 12, but that's it. So don't worry.
Well, I have to get on with my day. So how's that?
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, okay. My first aha moment, there are people in my circle of life who would not be able to read past the first chapter and would call me all kind of names and damn me to all kinds of hell for reading it. I immediately wanted to know why you wanted this to be the first book on your list. And I thought it was I called it a filtering system, because that's exactly what it would do in my life. And if people are going to start coming to my house, they're going to have to read this book first. But what I think was the most important aha moment was how it connected the dots of control by a few over the masses through fear, through storytelling. And ancient wars always made me wonder, what if we started with "I love you"? And that's when I wrote, that I had written that a long time ago, actually, and I spruced it up. So that was my first thing, of how concise it put human history, into that. How many courses do you have to take to learn all that? And how much time and then how mixed in with a few other things that you popped up there, like Jane Elliott and her saying how if you go back, we're all related by cousins from the 50th removed or something, 50th cousins or something, so that to me brings it home. We're all into this ancestry thing right now, especially one certain branch of my family tree. And they are very interesting, but they don't realize that if we start going really far back, we're going to end up in Africa, like everybody else. So to put this story in this context, just so easily laid out, I think if anyone's doing any kind of ancestry project, this is where you got to start. Doesn't matter. This is where you got to start. But so what I wrote, if you had to explain this book and what it was about, what would you say in a couple sentences? If you're interested in learning the history of mankind, why we are the way we are, believe the things we believe, and do the things we do, this story will open your mind to not just the past, but the possibilities of the future. And then I wrote, so I've read the two books, 1491 and 1492.
They're on my list. I'm going to read those next.
You know, they're both a couple inches thick.
Yeah.
So when I tell people about them, I always say, I'll tell them kind of what it's about. You watch their eyes glaze over, and then I'll say, really, it's about the plight of the potato. And you should totally read it. And then, so my sum it up alternative summary of the book is, or it's alien science fiction, mind-blowing alternative history all about sex. Sum it up?
It's always about sex.
Well, to get them to read it.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Maybe I should change 1491 and 1492 to the sex life of the potato. That's what it's about. Okay.
I love that you did a book review and published that on Medium. I think that was wonderful.
Well, and so that's, again, that brings it back to my website where I have it broken down into projects. And one of the projects is 200 books in a year, where I'm going to post all this, share all this stuff on there and link it all to that. Yeah. So I kind of have just a hub where all that is linked to. And if anybody else comes across it, they can find it too.
What's really funny, the original article that inspired me, the original article on Medium that inspired me to do 200 books a year. I went back in history to look at, kind of like, because I have been writing about this for a while. And I had a link to one of the articles, to that guy's article, and it's not on Medium anymore. Like, he took it down or deleted it or whatever. For why, I have no idea. But I did find a couple other articles that I'm going to post to the Slack room.
Do you have the author's name? Maybe he posted it to his own website or something.
I do have his name. Yeah.
You might look him up that way.
Yeah, I could ask him, hey, what happened to this article?
Very interesting. But, I think, so that's kind of some of the things with the group. Another building block of this would be for them to create some sort of portfolio somehow to document their journey through this, which I thought would be very interesting. Like at the beginning, I'm thinking about doing this today, is recording myself, where I'm at. I want to have some specific questions though, where I'm at in my life right now. Give me the rundown, the summary of it. Then what was the big goal, how did this conversation start, even though I know I've written about it, but, what is my big goal here? What are my big dreams? And then at the end of each book, record that as well. Does it have to be a video? No, it can be a book report. It can be an article that we write about it. But to be able to, even if it's just for our own thing, to go back and be able to look at it later on to see how we progress through it. Because if we don't document the progress, how do we know it's happened?
Yeah,
that's our data.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
but then it's also two things. It's also not only for our data to create this program, but it's also for them to share their experience with other people from their perspective who are already dialed into them, that might in turn bring them into, this bigger swirly thing we got going on.
Swirly thing.
Yeah,
we'll go with that.
The petri dish.
The swirly thing.
Swirly thing. We're in the primordial soup right now.
Yeah, we are.
So it's about, and this is something that I'm trying to work on with this website, is it's not about posting everything to this website. It's about sharing, like I'll go off into the niches and be able to post, about reading and about dysfunction, about dealing with narcissism and what I'm studying. But this will be my primordial soup, where it's all, what am I going to gel out of this? Right. My idea was the medium for silver. Well, now I can kind of see that maybe that's not the right thing. Maybe where I'm supposed to be more writing about is about dysfunction of family and, narcissism, surviving narcissism, or, all those kinds of things, because those are things that's where all of my anger comes from. That's where all of my comes from.
Yes.
I mean, maybe
I like your perspective. I like your perspective. I will say that, having the documentation of the journey is valuable, both, on Medium and video. And your handwritten journals, all of that. It's all good. Like I can go back to my journals from 2 years ago and I can see the progress. And that's really valuable. And I would also say that one of the things that you mentioned that's really very telling is when you said, I thought I would do this, but maybe that's not it. As you grow, right? As you change, and you're changing your brain and you're changing your ideas, and you grow and you change into what you are becoming, you'll find that the thing you thought was the thing you were supposed to work on, actually it'll morph into something slightly different. And you'll know, you're going to love the Hillman work, the Soul's Code. You'll know when you found the thing that you're supposed to, this is it. You'll know, because you'll start to feel flow, and you'll start to be surrounded. That people talk about that law of attraction thing, but that's real. Like, you will start to see that the people that are surrounding you, the people that are around you, the conversations that you're having, there's no friction there. It's frictionless. There's it's just this easy thing that happens, and the people think like you and talk like you, and you're not, and it's not stressful. It's not like enraged. You're not united by anger or fear or all the lower level emotions. You're not united by that, but you're united by the higher level emotions, which are those, love and joy, right?
And being able to identify them and being able to talk about them.
Yeah.
And you're going to love the Mr. Rogers movie. You're going to love it.
I know I am. It's on
and
my
just
list.
being able to talk about it. That's the problem. How did Mr. Rogers put it? Something about, we can manage something if we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And so that comes back to a lot of my family dysfunction, is they didn't manage it because they didn't talk about it. They just buried it down and then kept reliving it because they couldn't, so we have to be able to talk about it to manage
I need to get something. Hold on one second.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
But it comes down, you're right. Well, you'll know when you found that thing because of the flow, you're attracting, but you have to start working towards that thing, and that, that you've already got, because that's the first step to where you're supposed to be headed.
Yes.
And if you take that first step, someone might fall off, someone might come in, a new book, let go, all this stuff has to happen. But if you're fighting it, it takes longer. The signs have to get harder. The universe has to go.
Yes. So you have to be open and just willing to, it's like, goes back to that meditation thing, and willing to let the energy flow come into you and flow through you. And it sounds all very woo-woo and mysterious, but it's
let's
real.
go back to our very first thing, the mindset.
Yeah.
It's all about mindset.
Yeah.
And
these are like first steps. A lot of these are first steps. So I don't know. I don't know that I put this on the curated list. I don't know if it should be, but since Mr. Rogers has come up here a couple times, I'm going to mention this book called The World According to Mr. Rogers. And it's a compilation of things that he wrote, were written about him, some presentations that he did. It's really good in audiobook because you get to hear his voice when he, talked to different groups, and it's lovely, hearing his actual.
Oh God, yeah.
So I don't know, maybe like if you pick it up and listen to it, maybe it should be on the curated book list. You tell me after you go through it. It's really good. I loved it.
My next one is mindset, right?
Yeah,
my next one is mindset, and then I'll put that one as next.
I'm glad you liked Black Hole Focus. I do get into, so I'm with my, I'm like at any point in time, I'm like into 3 or 4 books at the same time. I have the 3rd book in the series after Homo Deus. Sapiens, he kind of leaves that open at the end, and then you go into Homo Deus, and he envisions possibilities for humanity, which I really appreciated. And then the 3rd book, I have that sitting here that I need to dig into shortly.
Ooh, yeah.
But I think that I'm not going to curate a book unless I think that it has significant enough
Impact.
impact.
Yeah, it has to have impact. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll go back. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. What was your favorite part of the book? What section and why? The first chapter stands out. The way the human family tree is so easily mapped out. This is something I've always felt was human reality. We are all ultimately related. The part about religion, something else I realized a few years back, it's a story created to control the masses and make them fear the inevitable, death. It's the beginning of the us versus them tragedy of human existence. And then, of course, my snarkiness, I was right.
No.
I was right. I've known this. It's like, anyways. What 3 things would you like to discuss further in the mastermind for this book? How is this not a part of our educational curriculum? That was my first question. How is this not a part of our educational curriculum? And then how knowledge needs to influence education instead of fear. And what knowledge, who's going to present what knowledge to us, but it cannot be fear-based. Are there places already doing this and then my thing is always getting students' hands into the earth, because that's, I believe, where our connection begins to happen. If you start to grow food and understand the earth and all that, you seem to understand people better, or you just stay away from them more. Okay, so how do you think this book changed your mindset, if at all, about why humans do the things they do? Be brief. We're mostly idiots due to inferior lucky breeding and can only better ourselves through the enlightenment of science, observation, and documentation, leading to intelligent change. That about summed it up. And I listen to it on audio. I like being able to do other things while I'm listening. I'm usually gardening or I'm doing my chores. But because of this topic, it was very interesting while I was reading into it, while I'm doing my gardening. I felt very reconnected to earth and spirit. And I had to learn how to take clip notes doing it with dirty hands. It was kind of funny. I have one headset that is for gardening. It's dirty, it's gross, but it works. I can clip stuff. And then what physical senses might you have felt engaged while you're reading? I wanted to be outside more, breathing air and having my hands more in the dirt. It was very interesting. Quotes that stood out to you worth mentioning. Believing the story connects the community. So if you believe the story, you're connected to your community. That was very interesting. But if you're not connected to, if you don't believe that story, you got to go find another community where they believe that same story, right?
Yeah, because we are connected by story. It's true.
So, and then dual realities, what is real and what is not real, is what is perceived to be real by the masses. And then my favorite question, what do we want to become?
Yeah, beautiful.
So that was my thing. And I'll share that but I didn't want to share it to the group until they got there. I don't want to influence.
Yeah, that's why I think in the things like the cohort, that's where I think from a time, so you mentioned about time and looking at things over time. So like this video, I feel like, I'll create the video, it'll get encoded and whatever, and then I'm going to put it in cohort 1. I'm not going to put it in the other cohorts.
Right.
Because, cohort
this is our
1,
first time talking about the book too.
Right.
I think as we go through, we're going to learn more from other people's insights.
Exactly.
I think, I'm super interested to hear what other people say about it, especially someone who might be coming from a place where I was about 3 or 4 years ago, when I was having a lot of mind twist about religion and story, on, you know, if they're going through the same sort of thing, because giving up that belief in that story is very guilt. You know, there's a lot of guilt and shame and fear there. And so it would be interesting to find someone else going through that same moment.
Yeah. And I feel like, here's the other thing. I think that if you, like, once we see other people's videos and we hear other conversations from other people, and as more people do that and share, then I think what will happen is more people will want to come into the group conversations. And right, because like, oh, I wish I would have been a part of that conversation. That would have been cool.
Right.
So, and I think as we go also, there will be some conversations where we go, you know, we could share this to everybody like this conversation, you know, could probably go either way. We could probably share this to every single cohort.
Well, you know, it'd be also interesting to turn it into a podcast of,
well, it's kind of like it kind of becomes its own little private podcast in the book club.
Right. But you could host a private podcast channel where it's only for the book club, and then eventually it's got so much content in it you could just open it up.
Yeah, and I think we could do that or
some of it
as we grow. I think as we go along, and then we have more people, and people are going through it. I'm pretty happy with how we already are into like the 3rd cohort already.
Yeah.
And it's kind of growing organically. And like, I've had people say, oh, I want to be part of that, and I know somebody who would be too. Yeah. And so that's happening.
I haven't had any takers yet, so obviously my language isn't right yet.
Don't think in terms of right or wrong. Just think in terms of sharing. It's not.
No, I'm thinking in terms of growing my cult. It's funny, when I was telling, you know, I talked to my daughter a lot about this. We had this great afternoon on Friday, and we were talking about it, and I was mindset and saying all these words, and she goes, Mom, it sounds like you're making a cult. I go, yeah, honey, it's on the bucket list.
I'm making a cult.
I go, but it's a good cult. She goes, yeah,
It's a cult for good. Aren't all cults supposed to be for good? No, I don't think
Road to hell is paved with good intentions.
I think some cults are for, like, you know, I don't know, the comet comes and then you jump off the planet or something.
Well, that's how Scientology started. So you know, I lived in LA. We'd been by the big Scientology buildings, all that up there. And we actually and then out in Hemet, California, they have another compound where they've got a bunch of funky buildings built. And a friend of ours who lives out there had some really neat horses, and he got hired to be a part of a L. Ron Hubbard, like, commercial or something video they did, Scientology thing. I don't know what it was. And that got me interested in what is they're all about. And I learned and learned and learned. But then when I realized that their whole founding thing is because their leader was getting kicked off a planet that was being invaded by another bunch of people. So they all aborted that planet and came here. So when I found out that's what their religion was founded on, I'm like, well, down, hello, beam me up. I've been waiting.
But you're still here.
But I'm still here. Yeah. So well, up the road from here, we have, I don't know what it is that they use. Some are cell phone towers, but this obviously it's not tall enough. You know, they use the fake palm trees and fake pine trees.
Yeah.
Well, we have fake saguaro cactuses.
Oh, wow.
And one of them up the top of the hill is humongous. You know, it stands out as being that is not a real one. Some of them you see and you go, yeah, that's fake. You know, you don't even realize the birds even land on them. But this one is so big, and sometimes there'll be a car parked out there, like a service little pickup truck, like, you know, he's servicing it, but you don't see anybody walking around. So I used to tease my daughter that, oh, he's beamed up to the mothership. He's checking in. He'll be back later. You know, and if I'm ever gone, just check to see if my car's parked by here. I've beamed up for a while.
If you're still here, if you're not beamed up and you're still on the planet, it means there's still work to do.
Yeah. But yeah, there's just, there's portals everywhere. You just got to find
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I'm inclined to share this with everybody just as a, as a kind of a beginning. What
Just
do
to
you think?
start, to let them know this is not something formal. This is a
Yeah.
conversation. We're
It's
just,
a conversation. Yep.
people having a conversation, and we're trying to build our table is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll put it in the, I don't know, general or 200 books. We'll start a new one called podcast.
Oh, there you go. Just,
Recordings. What should we call it?
maybe
Conversations. Video
these are
conversations.
the masterminds. These are the masterminds.
Oh yeah, let's call it that. Masterminds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the
Let's do that.
masterminds.
Yeah,
so
let's do that.
However you want to label that, mastermind
Okay.
for cohort 1,
Yeah, I'll
or
do that.
mastermind for, that kind of thing. Break it up, because keep
Yeah.
it.
That's what I'll do. Yep.
But
Okay. Sounds good.
okay.
So have a good day out there in sunny Arizona.
Thank you. You have a good day out there in upstate New York. Oh, you know what? I want to reschedule with you to do those questions that you were doing with people.
Oh, the interview. Yeah, I could still do it, but I'm kind of past that phase now.
Okay.
I did almost 30 interviews.
Wow.
In 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just like constantly zoom, like nonstop, like enough time to grab a sandwich and go back into it. It was really intense, but it was really valuable. It was really good.
Well, just send me a list of your questions then.
Or
they're not
I have it.
defined questions.
Yeah, it's a conversation. It's like this. It's a conversation. Yeah.
Neat. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
All righty, girl.
Well,
I'll be sending stuff then, and then we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes, indeed. We will talk again. Oh, we'll have to figure out what's the next book that we want to discuss. So maybe Black Hole Focus.
Most definitely. Even though we kind of did here, I think, to be able to have, especially because we'll need it, like this one will be labeled Mastermind, Sapiens. The next one will have to be the Black Hole Focus. So I definitely want to discuss that, because
let's do that. Okay.
It's going to change my week here.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later. Have a good day. Thanks, Susan.
Okay. You too.
Bye.